Welcome back. Today I am joined by Manny Almendarez, who is here to give us a United update. And we're going to talk mostly about insurances that the residents can have. Well, hi, Manny. Welcome to our show. How are you?
Very good. Thank you very much for the kind welcome.
Oh,
Let's
you're
go.
welcome. I know. Well, welcome to our Zoom interviews. So nonetheless, you guys had a discussion talking about various types of insurances that our residents can have. So what are the different types of property insurance policies that a member in the United Laguna Woods Mutual should be aware of?
Uh, I'm glad that I was invited to give this presentation because this is an area that a lot of manor-owned members, well, let's call it members, don't understand property insurance. And there's a couple of reasons why that can be hard to understand. First of all, there's two types. There's the renter's policy, and then there's the HO6 or condo policy. And it all depends on the condition of your manor when you purchase it and close escrow as to which policy will more adequately provide the coverage that you need.
Okay. And so what then is necessary for a United member to provide insurance coverage on their co-op, since United Mutual already has property and liability insurance coverage on all of United Mutual's co-ops through their master policies?
Excellent question. Even though the mutual United have coverage on the property, since they own all of the property, they basically have coverage that takes care of any losses on the property and also liability from their operating the community. However, what our members don't recognize is that it doesn't cover every item that could be involved in a loss. For example, you are a lessee under a 3-year lease of the property that the mutual owns. So as a consequence, as a lessee, you have personal property such as your furniture, your clothing, those kind of things. Those would not be covered in the master policy. You also would have, let's say you had a loss and you had to move out for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it took to restore the property. That would be called loss of use. And that would be expenses to live somewhere else during the time you're gone. I would generally just pay for your rental or hotel costs. Mm-hmm. And there are other coverages that a condo policy would provide in addition to these.
Okay. So how do you decide if you should have a renter's policy or an HO6 policy?
Another good question. When you close escrow on your unit, the process is that prior to that, an inspection would have been done of your unit by the mutual. And then that lists all the items that either are in conformance with lane or any alterations or improvements that you made to the manor. And when you close escrow, you're also provided that same list of all these improvements. Now, if you have a manor that's in the original condition, the previous owner never made any improvements to it, you haven't made any improvements to it, and it is maintained by the mutual, they're responsible for repair. They're also responsible for replacements. In that situation, you are in a typical renter situation. So a renter's policy is all you would really need. Now, if you do any alterations at all, like I purchased a unit that was basically totally remodeled, in that case, then you will not have adequate insurance. And so that's where you would want a condo policy, because a condo policy would then have a coverage for improvements that you're totally responsible for. Because if you do any improvement, even though the mutual owns that property, you are now responsible for the maintenance, repair, and replacement of that. Also, when you have a co-op policy, you have other coverages that you would have under a renter's policy. But the basic distinction as to which one you would select would depend on the condition of your manor. Even after you close escrow, if you do improvements in and you have just a renter's policy, then you should consider a condo policy, an HO6.
Okay. So when you talk about maintenance on the equipment, like the refrigerator or any appliance that may be updated, like you said, or upgraded in that process, is that like one of those maintenance HOA? I'm not kind of HOA. It's like a.
No, I know what you're talking about.
You know
Yeah, I'm
what I'm
glad you
talking
asked
about?
that
Is that what
question.
you're referring to?
No, that's
Okay.
different. That's different.
Okay.
Okay, because all these coverages are in the event of a loss. Okay, now they do have contracts out there where you pay a monthly fee
Mhm.
and they'll provide the maintenance of any of your appliances, your refrigerator, your stove, those kinds of things,
Right.
and even have protection in there in case they have to replace it. Now that's totally different from either renters or HOA. That's a special contract for insuring your appliances for
Okay.
repairs, maintenance, even replacement.
So you
Okay?
could still do that if you needed to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm looking into that myself right now. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that people could still get that if they wanted to, because
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not covered
They
now.
could get that on there either if they have a renters
Yeah.
or if they had an HOA condo policy, they could get that other. And that would usually be through a company that provides that service, not through an insurance
Right.
company.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
So let's talk a little about the differences between a renter's policy and an HO6 policy.
Well, again, for some of these questions, even though I thought I was very knowledgeable, I still looked up some of these to be sure of it. And when I first moved into Laguna Woods Village, I was a renter because I wanted to look around and make sure I got the location I wanted and the type unit. So I looked up my old renter's policy, and surprisingly enough, here's what it had. It had property coverage, and it was just personal property, but it did have $10,000 of improvements, which surprised me. It had liability coverage, $300,000. It had loss of use coverage, and it had medical payments to others. Now, the HO6 policy, in addition to those, will have all those coverages, but it will also have coverages for the improvements, so that if you remodel your unit, a renter's policy wouldn't be additional value that you created there. And that's why you want to have that version. Your master policy that the mutual provides would not cover that. So you yourself would have to have that. And even though the mutual owns that property, you are now responsible for the repair and replacement of all that property. So again, that's why you need that insurance coverage.
Right.
You have one other one that surprised me. I even had to look it up on my current policy, and that's called association loss assessment. And that's a situation where let's say a loss, and it's a loss that falls under the mutual's coverage, but then the mutual doesn't have adequate insurance to cover all that, and so they have to come along with a special assessment to the members. Okay, an HO6 policy would have what is called an association loss assessment. Mm-hmm. So you would be covered if all of a sudden you got hit with a special assessment of a couple $1,000. An HO6 would have that coverage. Okay, I mean, like I said, I'm knowledgeable, and so I looked that up just to make sure I described it correctly. You would not have that in a renter's policy. So you have the improvements coverage, and then you have this association loss assessment coverage. Those you would not have in a renter's. So that's basically the two differences.
When you check into these kinds of insurances, are they costly or are they pretty reasonable?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, and I looked that up myself because I was curious. The policy that I took out when I was a renter, and that was in 2016, policy was $520, and I'm just getting ready to read my new policy, and that was a renter's policy.
Right.
And I'm just getting ready to renew my new policy July 5th, and that is $830. So it is more expensive, but not that significantly, particularly when you consider that insurance premiums have gone up in the last year because of all the fires that we've had. So that's a good comparison, I told you. And the amounts of coverages that I have, for example, liability loss of use, those were the same under the rent policy as under my HO6.
Right.
However, for and same thing with personal property, that was 50,000, still 50,000. Liability was 300,000, still 300,000. But my building property, I've got $105,000, and that's the value I placed on the additional improvements that I added to this unit.
Okay.
I also have this association loss assessment. I have $51,000 in coverage for that. So
Oh, wow.
those are the differences, and that gives you an idea of the premium cost per year.
Okay, got it. Got it. Okay, good. Now, there are some other things that you wanted to tell us about in regards to fault, because, you know, there would be a determination as to whose fault it was. And, you know, here I thought we live in a no fault state. I know we do for auto. Sure we do. But how does that apply with this type of insurance?
Good reminder. Since you've got two different policies in play, you got the mutuals policy, the entire development, and then you got each individual policy. The key thing there is who caused the loss. For example, whether you've got a renter's policy or an HO6 policy, let's say your unit had a water leak in the wall, and it had nothing to do with any of the improvements you did or whatever. It just developed. Well, the association is the one responsible for repairing that. So any losses you would incur in addition to that, like let's say it ruins your floor or your furniture and all that, then that would fall under the mutual policy. Now let's suppose that you had a kitchen fire that was caused because of your negligence. Okay, that's the case where your policy would come into play. So the key thing there is whose fault is it that created the loss as to whose policy will come into play. The only exception to that, of course, is like I said, if for some reason it fell under the mutual's responsibility and there was a loss and there was enough insurance to cover it, that's when the member shareholder policy would come into play if mutual had to put through a special assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope that clarifies it.
Okay. And then one last thing that we're discussing here is talking about if you own a co-op and then you're subleasing to someone, what are some advisements that you have regarding that?
Good reminder. If you own a unit and you sublease it out to another person, you should definitely insist in your rental agreement that they have renter's insurance. I know when I rented my unit here, it wasn't a requirement. I just knew enough about insurance that I knew I wanted to cover my contents, and I wanted to have liability coverage in case somebody had an accident within my unit. But a lot of people may not realize that when they go to sublease their unit to somebody else, that should be in their lease agreement. And they should also get documentation on that. They should get a copy of the policy or a rider or something that states that they're additional insured, it identifies their unit, that it's in place. And also it should have a provision in there that if the insurance company decides to cancel the policy, they will notify you 30 days in advance of that cancellation. Okay. Or if they're not going to renew the policy, cancellation can happen anytime, but if they're not going to renew it at the anniversary date, again, they should have that clause that they must notify you 30 days in advance. Because then you can go back to your tenant and say, hey, wait a second, before this lease comes up for renewal, you have to provide a proof of insurance again. Okay. So that's what I would recommend there. Okay. Now I do have some other advices to give, and that's that quite a while back, one of my friends that was in the insurance business told me about umbrella liability. And he said, it's a bargain these days, man. You got to take it out. Particularly, if you a higher net worth individual. Well, we live in a very litigious society. That's where people will sue you at a drop of a hat. So again, I would recommend getting what is called umbrella liability coverage. The basic coverage under either a HO6 or a renter's policy is $300,000, and that's not a lot these days. An umbrella policy, usually you start $1 million, you go up higher, but that's what I have. I have $1 million policy. And that cost me about $400 a year. It used to be a bargain. It used to be like $200 a year. But it's still, I would definitely advise getting that. Okay. Oh, the last thing that I was reminded by, again, the mutual, another good point is, I hope this has triggered some questions in your mind. Do not hesitate to talk to your insurance agent or insurance broker about these things. And don't wait till renewal time. You need to find out about these things in advance before a loss happens. So those are some recommendations. Thank you for asking.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Quick question for you regarding some of our realtors. Are our realtors aware of these different types of insurance policies at the time that we purchase?
Yes, they are. Again, it probably depends, because I know that I use the same realtor when I located the unit that I rented, and then I used him to purchase my share in the mutual here. And he was pretty knowledgeable, but he did learn some things from me. As a matter of fact, when he finished closing escrow and went out for a little celebration, he says, you know, Manny, I learned a lot from you. I said, I know. But I said, well, Bob, you know, I did too from you. I think most of our real estate people out there are knowledgeable, and they do point these things out. They may not be able to explain it the way I can, but they do make you aware of it.
Okay, that's excellent. So Manny, if people have questions, how can they get a hold of you?
Right? It's funny, I was going to volunteer that, but only if I was asked.
I'm
They can call
asking.
me at, okay. I can be reached at area code 949-975-9497. I'll repeat that again. 949-975-9497. And, you know, if you have any questions, yeah, don't hesitate. I'm available. Call me.
I like that. Thank you, because, well, I don't live here, so for me, it's like, sounds ridiculous amount of insurance. But I mean, I do know from a regular standpoint that an umbrella policy is good for liability. Primarily, like if you have a little dog and the little dog bites somebody, you know, the umbrella policy should cover something like that.
Yes.
So that goes kind of above and beyond everything else that you mentioned. So thank you for
Right.
clarifying all of that. I appreciate you taking the time, and you have a great day.
You too. Thank you very much, Lisa. It's a pleasure.
All right, you're welcome.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. And we'll be right back after this.